I'm meant to highlight the pros and cons of recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the Constitution. And I don't have any pros to deliver you because, to me, from my opinion, it's all bad. It's all bad news for our people. Great gains for the government. So we've got the recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the Australian Constitution. In the bush, you'll hear a lot of people, a lot of elders, they'll talk about drawing this line in the sand. Yep. So just imagine that this is the line in the sand. And on this side there is the Australian sovereignty, or their claim to sovereignty, and this is our sovereignty. We're separated. Yep. There's the Torres Strait Islands up there. So that's basically their own sovereign states, I guess. And I'm not talking about the individual nations that we have. This is just the summary of the one sovereign state for the time being, to get through this forum. Yep. So what is the Australian Constitution? The 1986 Australia Act is a British Act from British Parliament, known as the Act of the Parliament of the United Kingdom, called Australia Act 1986 UK. It is a statute authority which holds powers within British law to make its own laws. The sovereignty of the Constitution relies on the Queen, whose royal family did not treaty with First Nations people in our lands known as Australia to acquire rightful jurisdiction. So basically, I don't know if you've heard of Tony Abbott talking about constitutional recognition because he wants to make the Australian Constitution complete. Yep. The reason why he wants to make it complete because it's not complete. They have been usurping sovereignty, our sovereignty, via native title and via various legislations, hijacking it from the states via the states and arrangements, the arrangements with the States Acts, and acquiring jurisdiction through our acquiescence unknowingly. So they have an incomplete sovereignty, but what hooks them to us is Section 5126, which was amended in the 1967 referendum. And this Section 5126, this is what I really want to leave with people today. This is really important legislation. If there was only one legislation you walked away with in knowing, this is the one that I request that you get to know. Yep. This is the one the government wants. In the constitutional recommendations for the changes, they'll give you a whole range of legislations they want changed, but this is the one they really want changed. Yep. And initially this legislation 5126 was created for foreign, to deal with foreign nations via a treaty. That was how it was originally set up, I think 1893, way back then. So I'll just keep progressing on. So basically recognition will merge the sovereignties into the Australian sovereignty. So if we go back to here, the government want to join our sovereignty to their incomplete sovereignty, and they want to make it look like this, yeah? And we're all bound up with legislations, that's why I put the little lines across. So, yes, like Tom Karma says, oh, it doesn't take out sovereignty. Well, in a way, I guess it's correct, but it's void, it doesn't hold any power because it's entwined with the legislations around it. So the self-determination is basically robbed from our people, and it's under captivity, and we don't have any home. So the Australian Commonwealth will hold the absolute control of our people through recognition. And so, yeah, basically bound up in legislation. So the 1967 referendum, this is going back to the 5126. So here we have 5126 of the Australian Constitution. It's an external power. It's the race power. It's the power that the Commonwealth uses to control with race, the various races. So prior to 1967, it says here, 5126 empowered the Parliament to make laws with respect to the people of any race other than Aboriginal. Yep. So they couldn't make laws for Aboriginal people. Yep. And so a lot of people were saying back in the day, oh, that's racist. They can't make laws for us, you know. So let's fix the racism and let's make laws for them. Yep. But in actual fact, what they were really saying is they want to make specific laws for us, which is racist because they want to make interventions and basic cards and so forth. So that is racist. So it's basically a lie, the 67 referendum. I call it a lie. And the 67 referendum, when they did have the amendments, I've just left in there what it used to say, and they basically said 5126 empowered the Parliament to make laws with respect to the people of any race, and they eliminated Aboriginal, for whom it deemed necessary to make special laws. So by saying that they can't, by getting rid of that they couldn't do it for Aboriginals, they were thinking that they could do it for Aboriginal people, that they could just make, we're a race and they could make a law for us or any laws for us. Yep. And in actual fact, there was a court precedence that happened. There was a number of court precedences that happened that contested the Section 5126 that basically undid the 67 referendum, undid the lie. And I'll have a look at that in a minute. So basically, post-recognition, what they want on the next referendum is they want to do what they thought they had done in 67, but they are going to name it this time. This time they're saying they want to become a power to make laws with respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Yep. And this is where the problem is, because that impacts on our sovereignty. And I'll just quickly go back to that diagram, where if they become the power over our people and over our land legislations, they're basically taking that power, they're basically suffocating our sovereignty, they're squashing it, they're basically bringing it into captivity. Yep. So I'll go back to that. This is a court case. This is one of the precedences. I'm not sure how to pronounce this. Can anyone say that? Kuata. Thank you. So the Kuata case, this is where Justin Brennan, he questioned the validity of the Section 5126. And so pretty much that's become a precedence in law because, when findings in the High Court judge or by any courts will basically shift the law around a bit, which is making us go from British common law to Australian common law by these court cases. So anyways, there's a precedence that's been set that the 5126 is no longer really what the government had intended to for the 67 referendum. And so now they want to fix their blunder. They're not wanting to help us, they want to help themselves by having more control over us. So they now need to recognise us to fix their blunders. Yep. Does that make sense? Cool. Cool. So I'm just trying to rush through here because I know we're running out of time. Yeah, it's disgusting. It gets worse than this, hey? Yeah, for real. So, recognition of the referendum, the Commonwealth of Australia wishes to. Okay. This is a midnight, actually. I did this last night at midnight, so that didn't make sense then. But, so the government, through recognition, wishes to become a power to make laws with respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Yep, that's what they want to do. That's on the Noel Pearson, that's a quote from the Noel Pearson proposal. And even though there are about 4 different kind of proposals they've got up, guarantee the government won't budge unless this one gets through the door, yeah? This is what they want. And they want to enter us into recognisance, right? Because recognition in the Black Laws Dictionary means to enter into recognisance. So we're not dealing with Aboriginal English. You know how we have our Aboriginal English and we've got words and that means that to us and all this? When we're dealing with the Constitution, Aboriginal English does not apply. It's their law definitions that apply, yep? So we have to get really real with the word recognisance or recognition or recognise. It's the law definition. And the law definition means to enter into recognisance. And so here's some example of recognisance. I've got heaps more examples, but I didn't want to take too long today. But I'll just quickly mention the recognisance, entering into recognisance. That's a medieval law that was created in London, and they used it on creating the black slave trades that happened in America, India, where they were selling black people into slavery, and they brought them into recognisance first by the masters taking the ownership. The master would say, I want that one looks strong or whatever. And so they will enter them into recognisance. That slave would become the property of the master. This is recognisance, that's what it is. So the Australian government want us to be their property. They want to own us, yeah. So how recognisance has been used in Australia, Aborigines Act, this is with all the Aborigines Acts because they're state legislations. To remove the children, they entered them into recognisance. They made them the product, they own them as property. And they have to enter them into recognisance before they could remove them. So they become property of the Crown. So that's just, that is an excerpt, I think, from one of the acts, but it's exactly the same in all of the acts. That's why I've just left it like that. The Masters and Servants Act, 1892, enforcement of recognisance. See how it alludes to slavery, yeah? There's no freedom under recognisance. And I could go back further and show back in the day when they were taking the black slaves, because this sort of hooks up with the R. When they took them into recognisance, the masters would use a hot iron that had R on the hot iron, and they would actually burn the R onto the black slaves to say that they were recognised. That's basically, this is the law they want on us. This is a medieval law they want to throw at us in 2015. Okay. So basically, I'll just move away from that so we get that the history of recognisance is about being owned, yep? And the government want to be our slave masters. So basically, the government still wanting to go through Section 5126. Normally, it's done through a treaty, yep? But because they want to bring us into ownership, they want to bypass a treaty, which I believe is unconstitutional, yep? Because you can't just make these laws up, yep? So they're trying to bypass the treaty by going through Section 5126 by bringing us into recognisance, into their ownership, becoming their property. And so when they do that, that'll make their sovereignty complete. Tony Abbott would be most impressed that all of a sudden they will be complete, but at the cost of our freedom, at the cost of our human rights. Yep. And we'll be in bondage under their legislations. And so what happens with recognisance? Recognisance is also used with the judicial system. You know, when someone breaks the law and they go on bail, they enter into recognisance temporarily. Yep. So criminals go into recognisance. So here we are being offered a legislation, a law, that is offered to slaves and criminals. Yep. But the thing is, criminals get better off than us because they're on a contract. They're only temporarily under recognisance. we're being offered recognisance forevermore. And the scary thing about recognisance is that law is binding and can never be undone. So when they do the constitutional reform and they change, say, 5 or 6 legislations with the recognisance and with 5126, because it's binding, all them legislations around it bind with it, it can never be amended. You know how they go into the Senate, or the Senate go into the House of Representatives and they'll amend legislations, they'll tweak it, this and that. They cannot fix this because recognisance is binding, it's forever. Yep. There we go, I was trying to move that along. So I'm going off topic here a little bit, but I just wanted to move around. So once the Commonwealth uses external affairs power, which is the section 5126, to enact legislation, section 109 of the Commonwealth Constitution provides that the Commonwealth legislation prevails and any inconsistent state legislation is ineffective. So basically the Commonwealth will be able to bulldoze the state legislations out of the way. So basically they can also hijack the state's sovereignty as well. Yep. Because their jurisdictions also come through the Aboriginal Affairs Acts, which basically are coming through our land. Yep. And so the Commonwealth will be able to hijack. So it's not just our sovereignties that are going to be at risk, our nation's sovereignty or the Aboriginal sovereignty. The states are also going to lose some footholds. Yep. And that's Anne Twomey, who's one of their respected constitutional lawyers. In 1977, the ALRC, which is the Australian Law Reform Commission, reported the Racial Discrimination Act is also partially powered up by 5126. Yeah? This is really important now. So that the Racial Discrimination Act is partially powered up by 5126. So if section 5126 is amended, yep, then the validity of the Racial Discrimination Act 1975 becomes seriously compromised. In fact, it could probably be undone completely. Yep. Therefore, the Racial Discrimination Act, the Racial Discrimination Act also powers up native title. So basically, it will take out native title as well. It will also, like I said back here, go backwards. State legislations, think about the state legislations we have. Land Rights Acts, yep. So there's Land Rights Acts going down, the gurgle. There goes native title. And people who know me well, like Uncle Michael Anderson and everybody, know that I can't stand native title. You know, I have my personal reasons, but I don't hold that against my people because I know our people have invested many years of their life into getting their land back, and they thought native title was the pathway to do it. And that's one of the reasons why I support sovereignty, because if we invest ourselves into legislations, we're going to get this. Yep. So that's my little 2-cent piece in the middle of that. So, in summary, recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the Australian Constitution, yes, it does. It wipes out sovereignty and land rights. Yep. It does override native title. It doesn't give rights. For example, there's no human rights bill in the Australian Constitution. So we're going in to be bound forever without human rights. Yep. Very, very dangerous stuff. And I'll give an example of that would be the paperless arrests, Commonwealth law in Northern Territory. You can imagine paperless arrests moving across the country under the Commonwealth, who can bulldoze state legislations out of the way. Yep. So that means any police can pick any one of us black fellas up off the side of the street just because we look suspicious because we're black fellas, and they can put us in the lockup without a paper trail. And the last deaths in custody that happened in the Northern Territory was from a paperless arrest. There was no paper trail. Yep. very dangerous for our people without human rights bill. Yep. So the recognition will turn blackfellas into the property of the Crown. Totally. Yep. Does not give blackfellas any power. Our self-determination is gone. Where is there a legislation in the Commonwealth Constitution that says we have the right to self-determination in the way that we, for our cultural interests, yeah, and our cultural law? So it doesn't protect our cultural rights at all because there's no legislation that has cultural protocols or even acknowledges our cultural law. Yeah. Does not recognise cultural ownership, does not protect cultural law. Yep, I just said that. And basically we're offered a restricted citizenship. Yep. We can have the rights to citizenship out, but also we will get these laws that will come at us, specifically at us, but not white people. 5126, through recognise, binding forever. And this allows the government to make laws for blackfellas as a targeted race. Yeah. So that's basically the explanation of why it's serious. This is a red flag, yeah? I should have put a red flag on that graphic. So the R, I spoke about the R before, it's used as the Crown seal. So you've got R for Regina for the Queen, R for Rex for the King, and they used to stamp everything with their R. That's the Crown, yeah? The R is from the Crown. And that's sealed. See, they call it a seal there, but the law of recognisance is binding. So they've combined two very dangerous, lethal laws together. A seal of the Crown and recognisance for criminals or slaves that is binding and can never be undone. You couldn't get anything more lethal. They couldn't have picked any two more lethal legislations, in my opinion, and joined them together. And then they've got the cheek to put blackfellas in these R shirts and promote that it's good because they haven't done their homework. And I find that is totally negligent of these blackfellas. If you haven't read the Constitution, get out of politics, get out of the way, because you're going to bind us into captivity. And it's going to we're going to lose lives out of this. We're losing lives already to the police. And it's going to get worse and it's going to heat up and we won't be able to do anything about it. And because we'll be under recognisance, if we say, oh no, I'm asserting my sovereignty, they will just go, you're being disruptive, we'll act on your behalf, which is what they can do, and they will represent you. Yep. So this is a real red alert. Yep. So that's basically what we will look like on a visual sense after recognition. Binding and can never be undone or modified forever. That's all. Now, the only times that the No campaign has never been funded was the 67 referendum and this one coming at us. So we are trying to combat the Recognise campaign, which is in excess of $700 million. I wouldn't be surprised it's up there in the billions, yeah? 700 million I blacktracked through ANTA, and that was like 3 years ago, and they've gone extravagant since then. So I would say they've spent $1 billion on marketing. We have our pension checks and our Centrelink payments to deal with the No campaign. And so we've got a Facebook page, and we just plead and plead and plead and hope that the word gets out there. And we write articles, we do research, we've studied the High Court, the Mabo High Court judges' journals, every speech they've ever said, all their, pretty much every court case they've ran that's significant to our people, ran through all the constitutional lawyers' documents and try to understand them. The research is incredible on no budget. So we're doing our best, but what I would ask for you, Mob, to share the message, help us out. We are without a budget.